Well, not entirely certain how it's going, but that's interesting. Stream must be really, really slow. Here we go. And so what do we got? Look at that. To infinity and back. I'm gonna have to adjust that a little bit. Well, when I kick the other screen up, it'll be fine. 6:30, and we have 2. Rock on. I'm not all alone.
First and only ones?
You guys are it, man.
Well, I had to start somewhere.
This is it.
Ta-da.
That's life. Win some, lose some. Give me $20.
Well, I guess I'll be here for the next few sessions.
Don't you owe me for the last one?
So there, we're pretty much square.
That's all right. It's all good.
Awesome.
What happened with the other?
What's that?
What happened with the other place that we used to meet at? The rec center.
The rec center? The old Y?
The one on is it Craig Farm?
Yeah, that's the old Y. Yeah. I don't know.
Wasn't available tonight?
This one's seriously convenient for me.
It was a weird shape too. It was really long.
They were oddball rooms, but
Yeah.
their price is about the same as this.
Oh, okay.
And it's all, to me, it's a matter of price and convenience for the room. I mean, it's not like this one's that difficult to get to compared to the Y.
Yeah.
No. Just out of interest, how much is it?
This room here, $85. $85 for the evening.
Not that bad.
And that's what the, I believe the Y
Hey.
charges the same
How you
price.
doing? Good. How about
for the
you?
same amount
Good
of
to
time.
see you.
Yeah, indeed.
Which is
We'll
cheap
talk
for
tomorrow.
rooms, because
Or
most
we
of
can
them
talk
are
tonight.
There's that.
So,
I have to.
hard to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, we're live
Over
on
tomorrow.
YouTube right now, just so everyone knows.
Sorry, we won't share our social security numbers then.
Yeah,
State
don't share
secrets.
your social security numbers, don't share without any other pertinent private information that you don't want the rest of the world to know about. I figure since my stream was supposed to start at 6:30, I may or may not have anyone show up for it, but
Someone told me they were going to come, my friends. So,
I figure I'd try to be consistent as I could be within the realms of what is possible for consistency. There we go. Ooh. All right. Well, it'll be an entertaining one for my tech-savvy friends here that are here tonight. I'll give it 2 more minutes. Give myself a chance to get settled in since I had
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy American Thanksgiving to all the American fans out there. Cheers. Since the U.S. is the only one that celebrates Thanksgiving on this day.
Apart from Canada and the U.S., who else does it?
Thanksgiving? Nobody.
Okay.
It's a U.S. and Canadian thing. Canada does it on the first Monday in October, and U.S. does it on the 4th Thursday in October or November.
I think the UK have started to do it, but it's kind of a
It's harvest or something.
it's
they
a
call it,
jokey
right?
thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
When I was growing up, I used to get 2 Thanksgivings a year. When I was
Nice.
growing up because we'd celebrate Canadian Thanksgiving because of my mom. So she'd do a Thanksgiving dinner for Canadian Thanksgiving, no matter where we were at in the world. And then, of course, we do the American Thanksgiving, which was, a month and a half later. So I used to get 2.
And I've worked in connected with so many American places. Usually this day is shut down, so you either do
Yeah.
all your software fixes or you take the day off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
either
nice.
or.
Well, for me,
Well,
it's,
it's even
I go in and work on client sites because I know nobody's looking at their sites today. Today's the day to break their websites. If you're going to break it today.
Oh yeah.
Because they're busy
They're
stuffing
not
their
gonna know.
faces. They don't really know. Tomorrow, they better be working tomorrow morning.
Black Friday.
By 12:01.
By 12:01 Friday morning, it better be up and running. All right. Well, we shall carry on then. This is going to be a general presentation here describing WordPress and ClassicPress. How ClassicPress came about, what it is, a bit of the history about what WordPress did wrong, a little bit of benefits of each one to give everyone the ideas on why you would want one over the other, at least from my viewpoints and the other viewpoints I've read out there on the globe. And from being involved in both communities as I have been for the last year. And I don't know if I need any introduction, everyone knows who I am here. JohnOverall.com, come see me for web hosting, all that other good stuff. I'm talking to all you YouTubers out there. That's who I'm really chatting to. It's a YouTube base. Not a big base, but it's still some. Okay, what we're going to do here is a comparison of WordPress versus ClassicPress. Why do you want one over the other? Feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm going to try to fill in as much information and details as I can to try to get everyone going and peek at my notes from time to time. Therefore, you will see me with glasses on my face because for some reason as I get older, it's harder to read that fine print. I need to print it out in like 20 point font nowadays. It's really getting irritating. Okay, first, a little bit of history. How did we arrive where we are now with ClassicPress? Well, about a year ago, since we're in November 2019, late 2018, WordPress, led by Matt Mullenweg, of course, decided that Gutenberg, a project they'd been working on for a while, was going to move from being just a plugin to pushing it into the core of WordPress. And by pushing it into the core of WordPress, they were going to change the way WordPress functioned going forward. WordPress was no longer going to be the WordPress that everyone knew. Gutenberg, as it's known, is a whole new editor. And they're replacing the old editor, or what's now known as the classic editor for WordPress. Now, this problem came about and it was forced down the community's throat against massive amounts of outrage. Lots of people in the community were outraged that was being forced down their throats, it was being crammed into the core. Many people didn't want it. So what happened was in August of 2019, the idea was floated to create a fork of WordPress. And that fork was called ClassicPress. And I don't remember the fellow's name off the top of my head that floated the idea, but he got a lot of feedback and a lot of volunteers to do that. So they went ahead and created a fork of WordPress in August 2019. And they forked it off. And in the beginning, it sort of trickled along a little bit. But with the forcing of Gutenberg down everyone's throat in December of 2018, ClassicPress took off. That's when ClassicPress actually came to my attention, was during the WordCamp USA 2018. And I actually did a big long video where I critiqued Matt's State of the Word address, where he was doing nothing but talking about Gutenberg in the future of WordPress. And so I took apart his words to the best of my ability. And so what happened there was when ClassicPress took off, they suddenly had a massive number of volunteers for the project. They created a team, they created a community, they created a forums board, they created all the base essentials they needed to have a full-blown fork of WordPress going forward. And this ClassicPress, they even set out a roadmap, and they've pretty much adhered to their roadmap of development for ClassicPress since its inception. And they are on version 1.1.2 or something right now, which is a couple of security releases that have come out. They've kept up with security updates for it. But ClassicPress version 1 is the equivalent, basically, of WordPress 4.9, just before the introduction of Gutenberg. It is compatible with all of the WordPress plugins and themes and everything else out there that you want running. So this is the history of it, and this is how it's come into being. And they have a team right now of about 15 core members, the membership running it. They have a very large community growing around them. And in the last couple of months, they've made some dramatic leaps and bounds, and we'll talk about those as we get to them. So the big question is why do you need to choose? What do you need to choose between? Why do you need to choose between Gutenberg, WordPress, or ClassicPress? Well, the biggest reason for it is the CMS landscape itself is changing dramatically. And what's going to happen is there's offerings out there that are going to be more tailored toward businesses and developers and more that are tailored towards users. One of the things that's happening with WordPress is that they are moving more in the direction of Wix, Medium, Squarespace, those sorts of development platforms, which are tailored more for the individual consumer, a person who has little to no knowledge about development. They just want to go in, hit a few buttons, create something, have it come out looking okay. It might look pretty, it might not look pretty, it depends upon whatever theme they've got running, and they're going to be stuck at the basics. They're limited in what they can do. Gutenberg, while a lot of developers are giving it high praise, many of them are saying it's not so high praise. My personal opinion of it, not so high praise. I've tried using it a couple of times now and I've completely abandoned actually using it. And I've been using either the WordPress Classic Editor with the Classic Editor plugin, or I've already started moving many of my sites off of that into ClassicPress. One of my major sites has been moved completely to ClassicPress, which is my WordPress plugins A to Z podcast website. It runs on ClassicPress. And that was my big experiment because it was a major website. It still runs over 55 plugins in it. It runs the Elementor theme system in it, has a whole lot of stuff that's running in it, and I needed to make sure it was all going to work under ClassicPress before I could move anyone else. And so far, it's been great. So this is why you got to choose. You got to choose, are you going to be a consumer or are you going to be a developer producing something for businesses? So let's talk a little bit about advantages to the system. Okay, WordPress advantages. Now WordPress does have some advantages to it, which is why a lot of people have been sticking with it. And they'll probably stick with it for another year or two. Of course, at the end of 2021, December 31st, 2021, WordPress has vowed that they will stop supporting the Classic Editor. And I'm pretty sure it's going to happen.
Sorry, what month?
The end of December 2021. So that's a year, that's just over 2 years from now.
That said, they did jump the gun a little bit with Gutenberg release.
Yep.
So December 2021 is the current date.
That's the current date. So they could change it. They could change it and decide to go sooner. But the moment that WordPress stops supporting that Classic Editor, everyone is going to be forced into Gutenberg. With whatever next iteration it is at that time of WordPress, it says after WordPress, say version 6 of WordPress, they'll say we're no longer going to support the Classic Editor.
Even with the plugin?
The plugin won't work, but other people will find ways around it. But will they work? Because already I'm seeing problems with running the Classic Editor, and because I'm running version 5.3 of WordPress, I'm starting to run into conflicts just running the Classic Editor, because you still have the Gutenberg code in there. The Gutenberg code is still underlaid. Basically what's happening is the plugin is trying to turn it off, but I'm not certain it's 100% effective. So this is something to think about. So the advantage of WordPress, of course, is 16 years of development. I mean, the WordPress has been around 16 years. It's had a lot of time to mature into a very nice CMS system. There's been a lot of plugins. There are literally thousands of plugins. Currently, I think my podcast, I say there's over 60,000 plugins for WordPress. So there's lots and lots of plugins for WordPress. Themes, there's tens of thousands of themes available too. So there's lots of development that's gone into it. Lots of tutorials, lots of information. Most of it still works with Gutenberg, but it's changing. Like one of the places I follow and get a lot of information from is called BlogAid. And she does a lot of research, and she actually went and she's gone full on Gutenberg. She's betting her whole business on Gutenberg. And so she's actually created tutorials on how to use Gutenberg. So good for her. I'm really happy that she's done that. So it gives me an idea on what's happening. But this is the sort of thing that's going to happen, is you're going to have to go one way or another eventually. There's lots of good information out there. There's lots of tricks, tips, and information that's going to help you. It's easy to customize WordPress. So those are the WordPress advantages. The disadvantages of it, as its current state, the biggest issue is, of course, the new integration of Gutenberg. If you haven't used Gutenberg or tried it yet, you should throw it up on a development site to find out what you think about it. Don't put it on your live site. Put it on a dev site, turn on Gutenberg, and then go try to create a post. Go try to customize your theme. Go try to edit things up. Go bring in different plugins and do everything else. Set up your blocks. Do all the different things with it. The disadvantage I personally feel with it is it's going to be good for blogs or blogging type users who have minimal need to do anything. We're talking about the people that currently use Wix, the ones that use Medium, the ones that use Squarespace for building out their websites. Because having used each of those areas, it's like as soon as I saw Gutenberg the first time, I went, oh my God, it's just like using Medium. That's what hit me the first time I used it. It was the exact same way of building out a website. I found it clunky, hard to do, took me 3 times as long to create the content I needed than it used to take me with the editor. That's what I feel is a massive disadvantage with it. One of the other disadvantages, as I've already mentioned, the Classic Editor is going to be discontinued in 2021. Another disadvantage to WordPress itself is there's tons of legacy code. They are just now moving out of supporting PHP 5.6. Okay, they're just moving into PHP 7. And that's been an ongoing thing. When we get to talking about ClassicPress with its first iteration, it stopped supporting PHP 5. That was one of the first things they cleaned up in there. Another thing that WordPress supports is it supports code that many businesses don't need, such as emojis and I can't remember all the other bits and pieces, just all sorts of little bits and pieces in WordPress that gives it a bloat that is unnecessary. And that's one of the big disadvantages of WordPress that I see happening. Okay, and of course change is here. It is coming. And that change is ClassicPress. ClassicPress's advantages. And ClassicPress itself, for starters, it maintains the best part of WordPress, where it peaked at 4.9. Very good system at that point. They forked it out there. Moving off of ClassicPress from WordPress is as simple as going to classicpress.net and downloading a plugin that they have. You click that plugin, it converts your site to ClassicPress. If you don't like it, you can go back into the ClassicPress plugin, click another button, and it'll convert you right back to WordPress. Very good system. It works well, going both ways, depending on what you want to do. I've tried it and tested it. It was a very nice feature. Because currently, of course, because they forked WordPress, all the core files are still using the WP extensions. That's going to change about when they come out with version 2.0 of ClassicPress. ClassicPress has vowed that their version 1.x is going to in perpetuity support anything that supports WordPress 4.9. They're going to keep it WordPress 4.9 compatible going forward. And they'll keep it up to date and secured going forward. When they hit version 2, that's when they're going to move in a completely different direction from WordPress. All the plugins and themes that work for WordPress currently work in ClassicPress. And so far, everything I've tested against it has not failed. I've had no problems. I've had some occasional buggy issues, such as when I used WordFence. When I used WordFence on ClassicPress, WordFence comes up and goes, there's a whole lot of files in here that don't belong. And basically they're ones that were changed to ClassicPress files. So WordFence was looking for the ClassicPress file structure. Though I did do an interview with someone from WordFence, Kathy Zant, and I did mention to her that, maybe you guys might want to consider supporting ClassicPress. So, and I brought it to her, and she goes, oh, ClassicPress, and she didn't think it was serious, and I gave her a lot of information, so I think it's getting more into the serious mark. And we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening with ClassicPress later. ClassicPress, again, just like WordPress, very easy to customize. Does a very nice job going in, customizing it up. You can use the customizers, you can customize your own files, folders, your own functions PHP file, whatever you need to do. You can do exactly the same as you've done in WordPress. The only thing that's eventually going to change is the difference between WP files and CP files. Those will be the extensions eventually. ClassicPress has been updated to the latest versions of PHP, except 7.4, which was, I think, just released this week. So I'm not sure anyone's up to date with that one yet.
Well, given how old the other ones are, it's like
7.3 is not that old.
no, but how long it's taken for the other ones to sunset.
Oh yeah, well everything else is sunsetting, but I've got almost all my sites moved to 7.3 now. But 7.4 introduces a whole lot of new stuff. I haven't read it all, but there's a whole lot of new changes in 7.4, and they've been running into compatibility problems with plugins. So there's some issues in 7.4 and what they've done. But they have updated the ClassicPress to support 7.1 and better, up to 7.3. They've already removed some legacy code from ClassicPress. It actually performs significantly faster. Before I moved my website from WordPress to ClassicPress, I did 2 tests on it. I did a what's that company? Nginx.
GT Metrics?
GT Metrics, thank you. I did a GT Metrics before it, and I did a GT Metrics after. I had a few fewer session calls, and I had a faster website. And it was significantly faster by a couple of seconds. And that was the only thing I'd done. So it actually works and performs faster, and a couple of other people that noticed it afterwards said it performed faster. So of course, what do we have that's disadvantages for ClassicPress? Well, right now, the only things I can see that are major disadvantages for ClassicPress is that it's a small community right now. If you ever wanted to get involved in a community that for development and become a big part of the community as it grows, ClassicPress is a prime example. You can get involved now, stick your head in the arena, go in there, answer questions. The community is wide open right now. But even though it's a small community, they're working very, very hard. I've done a couple of interviews with several different people from the community. I've done one with Code Potent, who's a really great supporter of ClassicPress, and he put his hat in the ring this year to become one of the members of their board. I've done an interview with, I can't get the other 2 people's name in my head, which were part of the main driving force of ClassicPress over the last year, one of the lead developers of ClassicPress. So they've got a lot going for them. They've got few dedicated plugins and themes right now. The dedicated plugins that are ClassicPress specific is less than 100 at the moment. There's not a lot that are focused purely on ClassicPress. But more and more developers are starting to support ClassicPress along with WordPress. Eventually people are going to have to choose sides. That's a good couple of years down the road right now, though. But right now, you can build for one and it works in the other still. I've even used a couple of the ClassicPress plugins in WordPress sites, because Code Potent creates some fantastic plugins that he develops for ClassicPress, but they also still work in WordPress, because the code base is still basically the same. They've got a lot, I can't, at the moment, there's not a lot of other disadvantages to it. They've taken away made sure the Gutenberg code didn't float along with it, so that's not a disadvantage. It's their main focus in ClassicPress is to push this out to the developer and business communities. Because the developer and business communities are finding that WordPress is no longer viable for a business development or a business website. Because with the Classic Editor, it gives the user too much leeway in how they can mess up a website. Basically, when you're developing for a business, you develop a theme, a look, something that runs along a company profile, a look and feel, and you set in fields for people when they fill in their content, and it presents it properly. With Gutenberg, it doesn't always give you those options to do that. It makes it a little bit more of a challenge to do. Let's pull up a couple of other things here. See what I'm missing. I know I'm missing a couple of things here.
John?
Yep.
Is there a company like Automatic that's going to be behind ClassicPress, or is it just going to be volunteer run, or how's that going to?
Community driven right now.
Okay.
100% community driven at the moment. There is no major company behind it like Automatic.
All right.
It would almost be better if it stayed that way, because Automatic is kind of landing a lot of their rules and a lot of their kind of ethics and morals and affecting the entire community.
As I've been prone to say about Matt and Automatic, which is probably why I'm not well liked there, is that Matt, I think it was several years ago, he called himself the benevolent dictator for WordPress. He's no longer benevolent. You know, and it's like you can't have a benevolent dictator, because once he gets enough power, they quit being benevolent and they just start doing what they want. It's like this came down, Gutenberg came down because Matt forced it in against everybody's wishes. He crammed it in there. And the other thing is Automatic, while they impose rules on people for their own plugins, they completely ignore those rules. They completely ignore the rules, and the rules aren't relevant to their plugins. I mean, the biggest example is what's their bloody anti-spam plugin?
Akismet?
Akismet is the biggest example of it. And then also the plugin they use that has soap loaded. What's their bloated plugin? Jetpack.
Yeah, Jetpack is just...
Jetpack is the other one. Jetpack is constantly violating the rules on promotions and advertisings in the back end. You know, even Yoast gets to violate the rules. Yoast violated those rules again today.
Yeah, the Black Friday sale.
The Black Friday sale. It's like I logged in the website and said, what the hell is this, Yoast? You got this big giant ad in the middle of my dashboard. You know, so it's like, and because Yoast is so tied into Automatic, he gets special dispensation too.
Yeah.
And that's the way I see it. That's the way many people see it in the community. It's like rules for it's like Animal Farm. Special, you know, some animals are more special than others. You know, and that's what's happened with it. And that's one of the things that I think ClassicPress is trying to avoid. They're trying to avoid that, and they're trying to make sure that they're community driven. All of their stuff, all of their information, what's going to be built, it goes through the community forum. They have a voting platform for it that they've built up. And to give some more feedback on ClassicPress, now that that's popped in my head, one of the things that was a bit of a concern to me about ClassicPress and is going to make a big difference, is actually two. One of them first was an e-commerce solution. Well, they actually have one now. They have forked WooCommerce. And it is being developed and being moved forward. There is not a beta version, I guess it's a bit of a beta version. There's a beta version out now of Classic Commerce that you can go download and test on your Classic. And from what I've seen of the feedback in the forums, it's been working very, very well. And once that gets fully developed out and fully forked, that's going to make a world of difference. The other thing that's, where'd it go? Just left my head. Two things. Instant installs. You know, such as one-click installs. They just got placed into the Insta install on Softalicious, I believe, in the hosting platforms. So with that happening, that's going to allow for more and more people to do the one-click installs like they do WordPress and others. So those two things are going to leap them forward over the next coming months. And there's more and more development. Beaver Builder announced today that they're supporting ClassicPress. Okay, so if you're a Beaver Builder fan, yeah, because they just announced that today. I only caught that this afternoon. That was just announced out by, of course, if you want to find out the latest information of ClassicPress, follow Code Potent, P-O-T-E-N-T, and follow him on Twitter. I get a lot of my information from him, and I've talked to him. I interviewed him. He's a really great guy, but he actually stops in and listens to my show from time to time, which I get thrilled about. But very good information from him. Follow the ClassicPress forums. So if you're looking for something that's going to make a difference, it's going to make a difference. Like when I first saw this a year ago, I thought, okay, this is going to change things. It's going to take them 2, 3, or 4 years to get there, but they're going to get there. And it's simply because in the beginning, people are going to be, I can just use the classic editor for WordPress. But as they move Gutenberg forward, and of course, Gutenberg, one of the big problems with it right now is, in fact, I believe Matt said it in the last State of the Word, is Gutenberg is moving to be a full-blown page builder system. Okay? And that is what their goal was. And when I first saw Gutenberg, that's what I saw it as. I said, oh my God, it's a page builder system, only more of a pain in the neck than the other page builder systems I use. Because I use page builder systems. I use Elementor. If you use Beaver Builder, it's pretty much the same. It's just a matter of which one you mesh with. I tried Beaver Builder. I couldn't understand the logic, but that's the way it works. Sometimes you understand one person's logic and not another's. But that's what Gutenberg's moving towards. And there's a lot of theme developers out there that are going to find their theme business killed. And so if they want to have a theme business again, they're going to have to migrate to something like ClassicPress. And that, I believe, is what Matt is going for. He's going for that model to kill it. Question?
No, I believe what you're saying, but I can't believe that they're going to try because Gutenberg is the worst of all the builder options I've seen.
Yeah.
And that goes back to like rinky-dink ones that are old. So
some people think it's the bee's knees. I've read the stuff. I read it regularly. It's like I said, the blog aid, one where I get a lot of information. She's really great technical information and stuff, but she's all in. She thinks Gutenberg is the future.
And I inadvertently make new blocks all the time when I try Gutenberg. It's like, how is this? Why do I have another new block? Like it's this run amok of it's like that thing out of Idiocracy where the guy says, he wasn't sure, so he goes,
I'm not sure.
His name is now not sure.
Not sure.
So it's like, do I want a block? I have 6. I didn't know I wanted 2. It's like...
Yeah, I hadn't even tried Gutenberg that far. Basically, when I got to the point where it just didn't work, I'd talk to my client and say, I think it's time to move you. Let's move you off of here and put you on ClassicPress. I've slowly started moving my clients to ClassicPress, especially since I have had a full-blown test of its stability. And every plugin that I've tried, I even tried a couple of new plugins today on my website because I needed to test them for my show. So I just threw them onto my WordPress, my WP plugins website, and they work beautiful. And so anything that works on there, I know is going to work because that's a site that's insane. What?
So 2 questions. One, do you go to the WordPress repository to find plugins and basically download them and then just throw them up on ClassicPress?
They've got the interface because anybody can interface into the WordPress repository. Okay. The API is open to the world. Yeah. So what they've done is they've just left the interface in ClassicPress that currently interfaces with WordPress's repository. So you download them the same as you would if you're in WordPress. Now the ClassicPress repository is in development. Okay. And once they bring about their own repository, that's going to be a game changer for them too. Yeah. That is something that they are working towards. They're working towards their own repository for that. They're working towards a couple of other things that WordPress has. A repository for themes and a repository for plugins. Because right now, if you set up ClassicPress, you use the WordPress repository and the WordPress for themes and plugins. And you just download them, just like you would in WordPress. And it activates them and runs them, no problem. So.
And changes all the WPs to CPs, basically?
Now, it doesn't have to right now it doesn't matter, because right now with WordPress, with ClassicPress 1.x, all of the core files are WP, except for a few files that are changed to CP.
Okay.
They're still using the WP content directory, they're still using the WP admin directory, they're still using the WP. Now the files inside the WP admin, the file names themselves have been moved from WP to CP. So,
okay.
I think that's what it is. I'm trying to remember all the file names. I haven't fully looked at the structure, but I know eventually the entire structure is going to move over to CP.
So, and that's my hesitation. So I am not a programmer, and I don't know servers. And so am I going to get stuck if I migrate a site over because I really needed to tinker a bit to make it work? Or is it pretty much seamless at this point?
It's seamless at this point. Right now it's seamless. I've even migrated for experiment. I migrated a 5.3 version of WordPress. I wanted to see what would happen if I migrated a 5.3 version.
And it's fine.
And it's fine.
Okay.
Because what it does, it removes all the Gutenberg code
and
moves you forward.
Okay.
So I have experimented just to see what happens, because of course if you're at 4.9, the move is perfect.
It's easy.
But at 5.4, I was worried what would happen, because of course I updated many sites before I updated many sites to 5 before I moved to ClassicPress. My WP plugins A to Z site was running 5.1 of WordPress when I migrated it over to ClassicPress. So it works great. It's really quite seamless. And if something went wrong, you could migrate back. Now, of course, before you migrate and test, make a backup.
Yeah.
Always make a backup. Never do anything this major without backing up first.
Yeah. One other question, security.
Mm-hmm.
So WordPress is great, but there's lots of people, lots of hackers from everywhere trying to get in and login attempts. Is it the same on ClassicPress because it's WP files, or is it less?
Probably going to be the same for a while.
Okay.
I mean, it's not going to, the attempts on the site are not going to change.
Okay.
Because there's still the WP admin folder that is there, where everything is kept. They haven't changed the main folder names from WP to CP.
Okay.
So you're still dealing with the security the same. And you just put your normal security on there, you do to protect your sites and keep everything secure.
Okay. And integrations with Search Console, analytics, SEO, pretty.
If you're using Yoast, you can use Yoast. The integrations, the rest of them, all the same.
Okay.
Now I have myself been looking to migrate away from those plugins, and for like ClassicPress, can't remember the name of the plugin now. There's an entirely different SEO plugin, which is so much better than Yoast. I put it on a test site, and it's so much cleaner, faster, and more efficient than Yoast. I just haven't made the time to yank Yoast off of my site and put it on there yet.
What is this magical unicorn?
Send me an email.
Okay.
I know it, and I've got it set aside. And you have to go download the plugin. It's not in any repository. They do have a premium version of it, but their free version is just like Yoast. You get the free version, you buy the premium version.
Okay.
And it's a really great, their stats are even better, their integration. And when I looked at it and loaded it, it still creates the same sort of window in your editor like Yoast does for customizing stuff. It creates all of that, so it's almost like not using Yoast, but it doesn't have all the crap that comes with Yoast. And this one here, it was one that was recommended to me. It was recommended to me when I was moving. And I said, well, what do I use for an SEO plugin for ClassicPress? And this is what was kicked out by people at the ClassicPress forums. The people at the ClassicPress forums have been very good at helping out and finding ways around things. And the developers are slowly getting on board. And it kind of reminds me of the early days because I've been around WordPress now for 10 years. And when I first got involved in WordPress, nobody knew it existed, hardly at all. I mean, at that point, it was just before the introduction of the post types. So post types didn't even exist when I first started using it. And as soon as post types existed, that's when I knew it was a game changer for a system. And that's kind of what ClassicPress reminds me of, is those early days when everybody was really working to move forward. But now that they've conquered 30% of the web, their arrogance is getting the best of them. Is basically how I see it. They got too big.
See, the thing I've said about the marketplace and the download is the biggest driver of WordPress is that sort of good balance of greed. Because Drupal died because everything was open source, but you had to pay a developer, $10,000 to turn it on.
Yeah.
And WordPress, everything was free, but you had to pay a whole bunch of people $50 to turn it on.
Yeah.
And they seem to not like that idea and not put commercial plugins inside of the WordPress download. They have freemium ones. And I think ClassicPress could actually make it work if they put freemium and paid and free all in the same ecosystem. And then it downloads and it hits almost like a paywall moment and goes, hang on a sec. And then ClassicPress could be the intermediary that takes that money to make sure it's one mediated place and gets their little piece of the pie, which funds themselves.
There's a discussion sort of along that lines in the ClassicPress forums. Because it's a continued discussion, because it's been a continuous thing discussed in the WordPress community for a long time.
Yeah.
Is about the freemium world.
It's pretty much impossible to get WooCommerce to work unless you spend at least $80.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more like $800.
It's more like 600. I think the average I read somewhere was $600.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the fallacy is that it's free, but it's not. And if they said that on the outset, you go, well, just open your wallet. No, this is what you have to do for that.
Depends on how much knowledge you have in code as to what you define free.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of code that goes into it. That's if you know code very well, you can make it pretty much free. I mean, I've set up WooCommerce for virtually free with like a $50 plugin. That's the one item that I needed that I couldn't make work any other way. So, and that's the thing is, and there's many like that. Even like Elementor. Aside from buying the premium version of it, I've spent close to $200 for Elementor add-ons to expand it out to do everything I really want it to do. And that happens a lot with almost all plugins. And what ClassicPress is going for is they're going for the business people, the people that are building websites for businesses, not the free bloggers, not the bloggers who literally have no money. Because they have no money. I've done work for bloggers many times over the years. They have no money. Because it's more of a hobby than it is a business. But if you get involved in the business, they might be cheap in the beginning, but as their website starts to grow, improve, it benefits their business, then they have no problem putting money out. But they need it to constantly perform, and it's got to perform at a better and better level every time. It can't just sit idle, or they can't just dramatically change the platform in such a way that everything they've done becomes no longer functional or working. And that's part of the big problems that's occurring in the WordPress community. And it's like those stories are out there, they're just not as big.
What are the numbers on usage for ClassicPress?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I haven't looked it up. They've got it listed on their website somewhere, what their active download or active installs are. It's not huge yet. It's not huge, but it's slowly growing.
Are there no legal proprietary issues over the basic code that?
Nope.
No.
It's the joys of GPL code.
Yeah, the core is open source and they're applied free.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, after all, WordPress itself was a fork from what was that?
CafePress.
CafePress. Thank you. It's kind of like WooCommerce was a fork from Jingo Shop. It's like you can take any, if you've got the wherewithal, you can take any of those plugins and go, I want to create my own. Take their code, plop it down, start modifying to your heart's content. Even worse, if you're not bound by ethics, Because there's more ethical standards than there are legal. If you're not bound by ethics, and there's been many businesses over the last few years that are not bound by ethics, what they'll do is they'll go into, say, WooCommerce shop, they'll buy up one copy of every plugin for a year's license, which gives them a year's worth of updates. They'll take all those plugins and they'll put them on a website and sell them as membership packages. And they'll sell them for like $25. You can have a membership and get access to every WooCommerce plugin. And for the next year, every time they get an update, they just upload it to their own website.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly legal. Nothing illegal about it. It's just a ethical issue.
And likewise, you go to GitHub and you can find most of the WordPress plugins that are premium plugins for free.
Mhm.
It's just you don't get access to any of the support, and
Yeah.
it's implied you don't get any access to updates.
That's
You
it.
just have to go fetch them again.
Yeah, you gotta keep fetching, and that's the thing. So there is ways to do it. It's a matter of how much time do you have on your hands, and where do you draw your ethical boundaries. I mean, everyone deserves to be paid for their time in some essence, in some form. And it's, I always try to compensate people for their time to the best of my ability, and to the best of the abilities they provide me. I don't want anyone to feel like they've been ripped off. Basically, it's so that when time comes to pay me, they have no problems paying me for my time. So you get what you dump out there. Let's see what else we got here that I hadn't really covered. That pretty much does cover it, and I know it's been ClassicPress heavy, but that's where it's at the moment. It's ClassicPress heavy. I mean, I don't really know anyone personally that is overly in love with Gutenberg. Most of the people I know are developers or business owners, and they're working with it to the best of their ability, but many of them are realizing that they're going to have to move away from it. And they've got to find something else. And so I'm doing my best to spread the word about ClassicPress and let people know it exists. Because as I've talked to and interviewed, I've interviewed a couple developers lately, aside from WordFence. I did an interview a couple of weeks ago. I just put it up. It was a developer for MailPost. If you know what MailPost is, I interviewed the developer for that. They've made some amazing changes in that plugin. If you've seen it once and you liked it, but it didn't quite have what you wanted, they've fixed all that. It's a fantastic plugin for doing your own mailing from your servers. And the beauty is because they actually have their own mailing system now, and they have included with the plugin a few thousand a month, kind of like the MailChimp limit of sending out emails, and it's sent through their mailing system, which is like MailChimp, so it's already whitelisted, so you don't have to try and deal with your own server for it. But yet you don't have to deal with MailChimp, and you can keep all your emails inside your website. I'm slowly migrating my stuff right now to it. But anyway, I was talking to him about ClassicPress. He goes, "Oh, ClassicPress isn't nothing yet, is it?" And it's like, "Oh, yes it is." And I got to chat with him for a little bit and enlighten him. He goes, "I think I should take another look at it." So, and this is what's happening, is there's a lot of people that, of course, they dismiss ClassicPress in the beginning, and because they don't have a lot of press right now, pretty much being ignored. And I think that WordPress would really wish they would be ignored and go away. But I'm pretty certain 2 or 3 years' time, they're going to start making a significant dent in WordPress's market share. And in 5 to 7 years, they'll make a massive dent in WordPress's market share. Because at that point there, people really have no choice but to choose their platform. So.
Is anyone doing like dedicated hosting for ClassicPress the way people do it for WordPress?
I am right
You're
now.
your own. Okay.
I'm on my hosting platform, my hosting service. My servers are right now, because ClassicPress is the same as WordPress. My servers are tuned for WordPress. So, and anyone else, if you're hosting anywhere you're hosting WordPress, you can host ClassicPress. It's just nobody started calling it ClassicPress hosting because the market share isn't there yet. There's not a large enough market.
Is ClassicPressHosting.com up for grabs?
I have no idea, but the whole world knows about it now. Quick, grab it.
That said,
Quick, do a search.
I'm getting it.
no, he's got the umpire. Anyways, WordPress really heavily defends the WordPress phrase as a copyright trademarked phrase.
Yeah.
Is ClassicPress doing the
Classic
same
Press will
level
be
of
doing the
defense?
same. They'll be doing the same, defending the Classic Press phrase. Because they'll have to.
Yeah.
It's like their logo is a feather. You know, they're going to be defending their logo too, the same way WordPress does. So, you know, so they'll have to just to make sure that it is well protected. So, right now it's like I knew better than to buy any domains with Classic Press. I bought cpplugins.com and CP plugins A to Z. As soon as I discovered Classic Press, I bought those ones that I knew I would actually turn into a market value. I didn't think about Classic Press hosting, otherwise I would have investigated that one a year ago
But
too.
CP hosting. Although CP hosting feels like a generic enough phrase.
Yeah,
It's got to be.
that one's probably
Same.
taken.
ClassicPress.host or something.
Yeah.
It's out there.
So, yeah, so that's pretty much it. I don't have a whole lot for this.
Awesome.
You know, I was hoping for more
So-
people to get more questions and, you know, we can just have some discussions.
It was really helpful.
Well, it'll be interesting to monitor it.
I would, if you're looking at things, I would definitely monitor it because it's going to make a difference out there eventually.
Yeah. I think most people just ignore it. Like, they just put in the classic editor plugin and just forget about it. Like,
Yeah.
as if Gutenberg never existed. That's kind of the approach that
This
I
takes
take.
until I got it, so I just use
It's
it.
just like all Gutenberg means to me is I add one more plugin to my site.
Yep.
And it goes away. And then I don't think about it and I do what I always did.